let's watch the video. Let's see what he says, and let's leave our 2 cents on it.
We have another term that has rose up recently in terms of usage lately with over-animation. Just to put this out there now, but over-animation is not some new term, and in fact has existed for years now, more so discussed around those who partake in the animation process and really understand the motion. What really pushed the term into the spotlight within the anime community, however, is a bit of a long story, but our series in question arrives at One Piece. For a long time now, One Piece has been pushing the question of how is this weekly producing results that a lot of seasonal shows cannot so easily replicate.
Another very massive thing, for those of us that have watched One Piece, and maybe you haven't, I'm going to make this as clear as possible so that all parties involved can understand. One Piece has been an anime that has started off before many of you were even born. And with the process of the years of technology improving and the show constantly airing, it's transitioned from being hand animated to digitally animated, right? Even though the animators are still working really hard on it, the animation and the amount of money One Piece has made makes it easier to produce. It's still extremely hard to do, but it makes it easier to provide this much quality week in and week out because it's One Piece. If you guys haven't noticed, or maybe you haven't watched it, like I said, One Piece is an anime that in every arc you go to, the animation style changes significantly, sometimes drastically, depending on the arc. It might be because the technology gets better, but depending on the arc, the animation style will change ever so slightly. Nowadays, with the end of Wano and Egghead, no spoilers, with the end of those two arcs, you can kind of see that a lot of the shading and the gradients in a lot of the animation, they've left that out. They've made it extremely minimalistic while keeping it high quality. And then when we need those episodes with more animation, more money getting smacked on top of the flipping episode, that's when they go all out.
Wano arc being one of the greatest times to be a One Piece fan, as the amount of episodes that had noteworthy presentations are easily in the double digits. As we are now in the Egghead arc, over-animation is a term that has been inserted into the conversation regarding the approach for these big moments. The discussion around it has gotten so loud that many reactors and other creators can't.
With Dragon Ball Super Broly, when that movie came out, look at the animation style. There isn't that much shading on the definition of the characters or on the shadows and all of that. They've kept it minimalistic while keeping it really vibrant and nice and aesthetically pleasing. When it comes to the animation of the fights and the blasts and the colors, it's a lot easier to then add detail when it's a lot more minimalistic. Look at the shift from JJK Season 1 to Season 2. This is the thing that's occurring because the demand to put out more anime is increasing. You're going to want to watch your anime or the next season of your anime within the year, right? And it takes up to 8 months minimum to make an anime. So, you're going to have to pick and choose.
Help but to take notice, and I'll be honest, it's a bit ridiculous. Part of me feels that this has been a long time coming due to some previous ignorant events. This is actually gonna take us back to Wano for a moment, and we're gonna look at this scene right here from animators Shinya Ohira and Akihiro Ota. Now in this scene, Luffy is pretty much revving up his Gear 5 once more, and well, it looks cool as hell. While a ton of people were absolutely floored by the power duo's depiction of the scene, a lot of rage baiters would initially.
Did Toei use AI to animate this One Piece episode? They ain't even trying anymore. See, now if this is rage bait, quite frankly, I'm not going to say because I don't want to get demonetized later on in life. But this is the type of stuff that, quite frankly, it is ridiculous. Maybe it is just rage bait and you can just ignore it. But that's just going to lead a cycle of people saying more stuff like this. Gear 5, in the common day, this was Goku going Super Saiyan. This was the moment. And them animating it like this was flawless. It's the newest peak of Luffy's character. and it's the transitioning into the end game of One Piece.
Accuse the scene of being AI. Now, I know it looks bad to give rage baiters attention, but bear with me because it all plays a part whether we like it or not. At the time, this was sparking discussion about how the One Piece anime had gotten a little crazy lately, but people did not know how they really wanted to go about explaining nor critiquing it. It always came back to the bubble of just talking about the animation, and outside of not being built for such a discussion, folks were missing that term that can really help articulate their thoughts. And so outside of sticking to the baseless ideas of AI, the controversy passed, but it would not be the last. Fast forward now to Egghead, and with the recent fight of Luffy versus Kizaru, a lot of people have used overanimated to describe how some of these big fights look. Naturally, the discourse grew, and then it grew some more, which in turn also gave room for people to
Sorry, but this looks like AI to me. Then your brain has been rotted by all those TikTok videos you've been watching. Saying an animation is AI is incredibly disrespectful to the animator, but you probably don't care since you're a kid.
bring up AI again because who needs integrity when you can just slander for the sake of the game? It's already bad enough mentioning.
Yeah, some people just genuinely like to hate for the sake of hating. And what I was saying about the animations, look at Zoro's face and look at his hair. If you go back and look at what Zoro used to look like, they would have done the I don't know, the shading or the shadows on his forehead, below the cheek, on top of the cheekbones, underneath the eyes, you know, more details on how he has the vein and how he's screwing his face. They would have animated a lot more of that, but they've kept it minimalistic as possible while keeping it high quality, because they know in motion it's gonna get techie, rev. If this was a movie, I don't think people would complain as much. I think it's just simply the fact that we lost more on the extra details when we're just watching it to gain more in the bigger moments. Because, like I said, especially in One Piece, at this point, there's a lot going on.
AI, but to make matters worse, people really don't know how to discuss over animation. This is not me trying to sound elitist or condescending, but rather the fact that people on average don't do their animation homework, which leads to the creation of self-proclaimed animation experts, which leads to others not understanding the critique or phrase, ultimately leading people to interpret it as something harmful or negative, thus leading to discourse, prompting the casual audience to dismiss the idea entirely, saying it's a made-up term, but in actuality it isn't, and there is some value to discuss here. Even before this video, I didn't exactly know what to make of it, and so I did the one thing anime fans never do, and that's my homework. Alongside some reading, the other day I sat down and watched a video from New Frame Plus about the over-animation of Zenless Zero. While One Piece and Zenless Zero go in two massively different directions, there are a lot of principles and ideas that they share through the animation process. Before I go any further, I do want to put a warning that everything I'm about to talk about is subjective and opens up avenues for critique or discussion. You do not have to agree, and if you have been enjoying everything One Piece has been doing, then please continue to do so, and do not worry about what the internet has to say. I do not want a bunch of angry Pomeranians in my comment section, just a fair warning. Now in this video, overanimation, to put it simply, was described as motion without purpose. Some ideas that were brought up were tons of extra superfluous movement, a bunch of animation principles stacked on top of each other, big exaggerated movements, but again, it is all subjective. Overanimation is not something that can be measured in consistent objective amounts. It all depends on the project, which is why the critique some people may have about JJK may not equally apply to One Piece. With that being said, concepts like exaggeration, capacity, clarity, distracting motion, and animator styles can be applied to this conversation. If we take all this and apply ourselves, I think the conversation we want to have about these recent One Piece moments begins to take shape. A lot of the critique and criticism has notably been surrounded around Gear 5. One of the most creative power-ups in recent big hit shonen, as the main character is quite literally embodying the idea of freedom. Being able to do what he wants, fight as he chooses, win as he pleases, opens up an ocean of creativity for Oda, but for animators, this is like hitting the jackpot. I've heard that animating Gear 5 is like one of the favorite things to do around the One Piece team these days, as the imagination is boundless for how these scenes are brought to life. However, it's evident that the boundless ideas may just be reaching a point where it's a bit much. Again, I'm not speaking for anybody, but based off what I've seen regarding these fights, some of the extent in which Gear 5 has been brought to life has not been visually appealing to everyone. Let it be known that I actually have enjoyed it all, but one major perspective I'm lacking is that of a manga reader. As an anime only, the one thing I cannot speak on is how the original context looks versus how it's brought to life. Majority of the time, I would assume that a lot of moments are elevated to an unprecedented level of quality, but that may not always be the consensus. Take this.
That is a very, very good point that this guy mentions, right? Many people that saw Gear 5 as a moment did not experience it as a One Piece watcher, if that makes sense. They saw that it was hype, it was viral all over TikTok, it was everywhere, you couldn't miss it. And naturally, a lot of anime fans, what they did was they followed the story from then, watched the animation, and just critiqued it. If you've been watching One Piece since 2000 and you've been watching it weekly, this scene of him going Gear 5 is gonna mean a lot more to you than it will be to anyone else. If you've been watching One Piece where you've caught up in the space of a year, 2 years, and then you watch that scene, it will mean something to you because you saw in a short amount of time the transition in animation to get to that point. And you can gradually see that as the characters go through the story, the animation also helps us visually pick up how long the show has taken. You see how Nami has changed from when her hair was shorter, now it's longer, now she has attacks and all of that. The animation style has changed. All of the Straw Hats have changed. And if you haven't watched One Piece, bro, you just search up before and after One Piece and you can see the changes in animation. But you're gonna consume it a lot differently based on, even if you were a manga reader. A lot of, especially One Piece, because the pacing isn't the greatest. You're reading 3 pages, 4 pages, maybe a chapter if you're lucky during an episode. And when they add stuff, they actually make up a lot of stuff, because in the manga, you're going from A to B. You're seeing everything that is important or pivotal to a story within the manga. In an anime, that's not the case.
Moment of Luffy charging at Kizaru. Not only does he interrupt him mid-sentence, but we get a crazy wind-up with some spins, then the haki application before the kick is delivered. However, a lot of manga fans feel that the approach in the anime takes away from the idea that it's supposed to be a speed blitz, meaning that what happened in 10 seconds might have needed to occur in half the time or less. Now here, I don't think is an issue of over-animation. I don't think people have an issue with how the wind-up comes together, but rather the direction of the scene and how fast it should be, which also makes me think that rather than labeling everything over animated, I think it's important for people to understand what they are trying to critique. A lot of people may want to blame the animation, but it may be the direction or storyboards, though anything is looking to be better than the sound effects at least. The actual big fight between Luffy versus Kizaru, however, is an entirely different story. This is where the can of worms is opened up, because now we're talking about readability and what people feel is hard to follow.
Luffy is the protagonist, and at this point in the story, he has reached what the author said is the peak of his power. Okay? He's already fought this guy, which is a big boss in the show, and this guy has the ability of light. No, he doesn't play with light. He is light. They already fought once before, and he got absolutely demolished. In that scene alone, why is it that they're gonna give us Luffy standing still and then jumping up, kicking him in like 3 seconds? Why would we get that? The animators can demonstrate that now he has the red sparks, which actually means something. It's called haki. He has haki. He actually moved pretty quickly. And then he actually did all of those spins and twirls and it looked amazing. And he kicked a guy that is made of light. Notice that when he kicked him, everything slowed down. Why? It shows the consumer, the reader, the viewer, that these guys are actually moving faster than we think they are. But those are my 2 cents on the controversial over animation stuff, especially in the anime communities. It's a bit weird. I just wanted to touch up on that subject and make a video about it. So if you guys want to watch the rest of the video, I know there's just like 4 minutes left, but I've been waffling for way too long. You guys can go and check out the video. I'll leave the link down below, and I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace.